Hello and welcome to this week's episode. And today we are blessed to have a special guest in the form of Penny Dix, Astro coach, astrologer, psychotherapist. Just amazing YouTuber and all sorts. Hello, Penny, and welcome to the show.
Hi, Julie, and thank you so much for inviting me here today.
You're very welcome. It's lovely to have you. I've been following you on YouTube, watching your astrology and your lives that you do there. And I know you said you've been watching some of my tarot as well. I'm blessed to have you. Thank you for coming on.
I love your tarot. I love the quality of it and the intuitive part of it, and the fact that I could tell you're channeling, and your channeling is superb. And it's certainly very accurate for me when I randomly pick out something to watch.
Okay.
So well done.
That's good to know. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I teach the law of attraction and I'm a hypnotherapist and counselor as well. So you always sort of put that information in, and I channel my spiritual team, Eli, as well. So lots of extra information, which is great. And I noticed the way that you do your astrology is a little similar in that you are absolutely tuning into your intuition and higher self and all of that past experience that you have with the psychology. So tell us about you. What were you doing before YouTube and you became the Astro coach, Penny Dix Astro coach? What were you doing before? What was life like before?
Wow. Well, life has been very varied. I've done many, many different things, which is probably what's helped give me the experience to be who I am today and to have developed in the way I've developed. I started training as a psychotherapist when I was in my late 20s due to personal life difficulties that sent me into therapy as a patient, because that's often how psychotherapists become psychotherapists, because they've been in therapy. And once I'd been in therapy for a while, I just thought, this is what I want to do. But alongside this, all the time, I had this fascination and huge interest with the tarot, astrology, and channeling, and just had this sense, had this feeling that there was something more to life and something more that I was meant to be doing, but I didn't quite know at that point what it is. Does that kind of
Oh,
resonate for
absolutely.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same with me. Most of us had a sort of first career for the first part of our life, and then we move into the second career where our intuition says, this isn't what you're meant to do. There's something else, there's something better. And we have to go find that something else and something better. And then we feel it fitting and sitting within our being and saying, this is it. This is what I'm meant to do. It's lovely that you had a similar experience to me. Yeah.
And it was interesting because all the way through my life, apart from all the various twists and turns that life took me down, good bits, bad bits, challenging bits, amazing bits, I had a musical career, I made a couple of records. All of that became very disillusioned at that time with the music business, because I realized it was an industry and I was just a product to be marketed. And what I found very difficult to cope with was that they weren't really interested in whether I had a good singing voice. It was, can they sell me?
Yeah.
And so they were constantly trying to put me into some kind of type of being product that didn't resonate with me. So I didn't stay with that very long. I then tripped over life a bit, and my father found me a job as a trainee money broker, which was completely the wrong place or the wrong thing for me to be doing. I struggled with that for a couple of years, and one of those years was in New York, which was an amazing experience. But all I seemed to be good at was entertaining the clients at business lunches, because I could hold my drink. So it was like that was think that's why they liked me, because, oh, we'll take Penny out because, you know, she's good with the clients. But alongside this is what I want to get to. Astrology has always been following me, as if it's been going, over here, come here, come here, we're calling you. And I met a friend when I was training as a psychotherapist. She wasn't in the training, but she was just a friend that I met. She was actually a hypnotherapist, interestingly. And to start with, she was still training, and so I volunteered to be her candidate, her person to practice on. And she would hardly have to start with me, and I'd go France. It was really quite funny. And at that time, I discovered that also that there was this pull that I could easily channel, that I was a little bit reluctant to kind of go down that path. I tried a bit, but at that point of my life, found it exhausting. I'm sure you resonate with that. Has that been an experience of yours with channeling?
Absolutely. You know, there are many tarot readers on YouTube that can literally churn out 8, 10 a day, every day. They, you know, and I used to do weeklies and monthlies. That's 12 a week. You know, that's 48 a month plus your monthlies. So we're up to 60, and then plus some lives and my clients. And I was burnt out within a year. It was just ridiculous. And I look at other channelers, other tarot readers, and think, how are you managing to do this? And what I realize is that the majority of them are simply reading the cards, using their knowledge of tarot. And I don't slate that at all. You know, tarot is a complex kind of science. And when you know your craft and you can just bang them out, it's fairly simple to do that. It must be, because otherwise, like people like Chris Reck, who is Minnow Pond Tarot, who does over 100 a month, you know, and has grown his channel to over, I think now 800,000 subscribers. But predominantly the people who can just keep churning them out are not channeling. All right. Channeling is very exhausting. And I can generally do no more than 5 or 6 sessions a day. And so for YouTube, I will try and limit it to 3 a day, and then allowing sort of 2, 3, 4, or 5 for my clients. And that's me done. And so if I've got a day where I've got no clients in, which is rare actually, then I can perhaps do 4 or 5 or 6 YouTubes, you know, and I will do them perhaps on a weekend. But there is a massive difference in the energy of channeling. Generally within about an hour and a half, I need quite a significant break. So whereas if I was just reading the cards, that's easy to do, you know. So channeling, yes, it takes a lot more effort and energy to be able to channel than it is to just read the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really pleased that you said that, actually, because that helps me a lot to understand what I've been attempting to process over the years, and certainly of late, because I've recognized that with my astrology, I am stepping out of my own way. And the astrology chart is more like a kind of blueprint. It's a map, and it's actually my particular guide and guides coming through and doing the work for me. So it's a very symbiotic experience that I'm having when I work with my astrology. And sometimes when I'm doing my live broadcasts, it kind of flows in and flows out, comes in and comes out. And I find it's sometimes it's difficult to contain that energy. And of course, with my background as a psychotherapist, which happened after the money broking, when I realized I was totally unsuited to anything that involved lots of figures. Whereas for you, Julie, as a Virgo, you should be good at the figures and the data and the
I'm
all of
actually
that.
not, interestingly enough. Me and maths, we're not friends. We're rather
Oh,
estranged, really.
okay.
The detail I can do when I'm, I've been spending this morning updating my website with a new membership program and
Oh,
making sure that the photos are right and making sure the links are all right, noticing the detail when something is off. That bit I can do. As soon as we bring maths into it, and I'm a bit, with the YouTube analytics, I kind of look at it, and for me, it's a little bit of a haze. I have what's the equivalent for maths with dyslexia. It's a little bit like that for
oh,
me.
I have that.
Arithmetic, I'm fine. I
Yeah,
can count and
yeah.
I can multiply and divide. As soon as you start giving me all sorts of charts and graphs and start saying,
Uh-huh.
y equals ZC square and algebra, and
Yeah.
that you've lost, you may as well talk Japanese to me. So yeah, me and maths, we're
No,
not good friends. It's my idea of hell to be any kind of accountant or money brokering or anything like that. I managed to do my accounts, and that's about it.
It was a hell. But basically, it put me into the place where I realized and recognized I need to learn much more about myself. And through that process, which was an eclectic training in Freud, Klein, and Jung, and the Carl Jung side of the psychotherapy that I learnt really appeals to me because it brings in myth, archetype, it's the creativity of it. It makes so much sense because I think when you're working with people, if you can find a kind of symbolic metaphor to help them understand what's happening for them, it makes it easier for them to stand outside, look at what's happening in their own life, and find more of a way through it or a solution. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I became a hypnotherapist in 2001, and my first career up until that point had been in housing, social housing, homelessness, women's refuges, things, people, under 25s, and drug and alcohol hostels, all sorts of the challenging end of people who have lost their way. And my job was managing services to help them get back on their way. So I'd always worked with what we called, I think a little bit unfairly, but vulnerable people, certainly in a vulnerable position rather than vulnerable people. And so when I trained to become a hypnotherapist, I'd already had that kind of care and support background, if you like. And also, I'd been highly intuitive and psychic since I was a child. So I was bringing that inner knowledge in as well. But I did hypnotherapy for about 10 years, and I had been getting more and more complex clients, complex cases coming through, and to know when to refer on to a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist or a psychologist, knowing when to say this is past my remit. And I was getting some more complex clients coming through with things like bipolar disorder and some quite really deep-seated addiction issues that hypnosis wasn't able to kind of shift. And I'd move them on, I would refer them on. But also, it was a frustration for me. I want to know more. I want to understand more. And I was just hitting my 50th birthday, 10 years into this. And I thought, I always wanted to go to university, and I regret that I didn't go. I was too dysfunctional at 18. I was too chaotic and traumatized from not very pleasant childhood. I couldn't possibly have held down a university place. And I was saying to my son, I wish I'd gone and done that now. And he said, well, why don't you go now? And I said, well, I'm 50 next week. It's a little bit late. And he said, well, in the UK, there's all sorts of grants and things available for mature students. Why don't you look into it? So I made a few calls. I sent a few emails. And literally within 24 hours, I was booked on a degree in psychology and sociology to start 4 days later. It just fell into place. And yeah, it was really interesting. And I did my degree. I came out with first class honours 4 years later, one of the oldest students there by then at 54. But it really, not so that I could become a psychologist. That's at 8 years, and 4 was more than enough for me, and I had a good business anyway, but I wanted to have more knowledge. And yeah, I studied Jung, I studied positive psychology, because it's one of my weaknesses is that I can be overly positive, what I would call toxic positivity, when I see the best in everything, when sometimes you need to step back and say, do you know what, that's pretty crap, and be able to be a little more balanced in the approach. So it helped me. And again, I did an astrology course back in 2000, only a little baby one. It was a 10-week course, and the more I learned, the more I realized this is a 10-year course to get everything you need.
20,
Oh my God, and
30.
more. But yeah, that 10 weeks that I did, I would say was one of the most helpful and powerful things I've done. I'd been into counseling myself, to receive counseling on several occasions through my 20s and 30s. But I learned more about myself in that 10-week astrology course than anything else. It was so, so helpful for self-acceptance, seeing things like I'm double Mercury, so I can't help but analyze. Stop trying to fix your over analytical mind. Just accept that is who you are. And things like, my moon being in Gemini, and, not being able to settle into things. And, it's just, it was a wonderful experience. And I saw how complicated it was and how much maths was involved. And I'm like, I can't be an astrologer. Easier these days with all of the, the digital stuff. I probably would be able to do it now, but I haven't got time to fit it into everything else I do. But yeah, so tell us more about the astrology and the psychology. How did they dovetail into each other?
Yes, well, it's interesting because I think, of course, as I was learning psychotherapy and going through the 5-year course, alongside that, I had this friend who was teaching me astrology, which just had seduced me. It had got me. It made so much sense, and it helped me make sense of my life. So there was something about the archetypes, as you can combine them with the planetary, the cosmos kind of energies, that just made total sense to me. So astrology, even though, as you say, it's kind of mathematically based, and when I was first introduced to astrology, it was still when you had to use pen and paper and maths and work it out. And I just found that hugely difficult. I couldn't get my head round it. And you have to learn to read one of these, which is, of course, an ephemeris, or the bus timetable. But once I realized how you could read it, I couldn't put it down because it sort of made so much sense. And as I say, so alongside the psychotherapy, psychology, and I worked for 20 years professionally as a psychotherapist in private practice. I was also attached to a psychiatric team of a hospital in Kent for a while, which was part of the training, but I actually continued with it because I learnt so much about diagnosis. And thinking back to when you were saying about with hypnotherapy, you have to recognize when you need to refer on. I learned so much from working with that psychiatric team and the psychiatrist. And so it was a wonderful tool that I could put in my box, which has empowered me as I've walked along this path. And gradually over the years, kind of found that I can make a kind of tapestry of the astrology and the psychology or the psychotherapy. I was introduced years ago, again, going back 30, 40 years, to an astrologer called Liz Green, who has written many books, and she was, or still is, a psychoanalytical psychotherapist and astrologer. And she taught astrology for many years. The teacher who finally I used to learn the bulk of my knowledge about astrology, Alison Chester Lambert, who's also written quite a few books about various cosmic bodies, especially the dwarf planets and the asteroids. So she had learnt under Liz Green. And because I have the psychotherapy background, it seemed natural that I would learn with Alison, because she had the teaching behind her of working under Liz Green and the astrology. And she'd done psychology as well. So it married the two together perfectly. And about, let me think, about 3, 4, maybe 4 years ago, she said to me, for goodness sake, I'm going to stop giving you lessons because you need to go out there and do this. Because I was like, oh no, I'm not sure that I'm really good enough. You know, it's a bit like imposter syndrome, you know, even though I'd had sort of 20 years experience of psychotherapy and astrology in varying forms with various different peoples, I couldn't quite believe that I was competent enough to actually work as an astrologer. Now, then, of course, what happened, it was 2019. And in 2019, I was looking at setting up a website and launching my sort of my astrology business, or my Astro coach business. And towards the end of 2019, with a sort of very basic website up, you know, for people to see and not really getting any traffic to it, I met up again with Alison, who came over to Gozo to visit me, because I live in Gozo, which is a very beautiful island with a lot of ancient monuments, temples, and energy. And she came to visit me, and it was actually the first time we met. And it was just actually at the beginning of 2020. Now, I had already, before that Christmas of 2019, gone out and bought boxes full of gloves, disposable masks, and hand sanitizer, to which my pharmacist said when I kept buying this stuff, "What are you doing this for?" And I'd say, "Well, because it's coming." And she'd say, "Oh, well, no, that pandemic, we're not going to have a pandemic. Fake news, fake news." So I said, "Well, I think it's coming, and I just want to make sure I'm equipped now." And I actually met up with Alison we had a very famous astrological conjunction on January the 11th, 2020, which was between Pluto and Saturn. And the combination of these two cosmic energies, Pluto being about breaking down the old order, Pluto about transformation and complete kind of change and endings, and Saturn being about containment, restriction, boundaries. That was just prior, as you well know, to the pandemic kind of becoming around in Europe and the rest of the world, and all the countries in Europe going into lockdown. So I found myself in this situation. Shall I just go on for a bit, because it's a little story?
Carry on. This is really interesting. I'm loving it.
I go on for a little bit, and I'm still doing my astrology and looking at it and looking at the charts and all of that. And in my back of my head, I'm thinking, I have that YouTube channel that I've never really used. You know, maybe I could do something with it. And what happened was, I decided I could either go down a path of complete negativity, fear, and anxiety with the experience of lockdown and the fear that I think we all probably experienced at the beginning, because it was the unknown. And we were dealing with the uncertainty of the unknown, which is not, doesn't kind of, it's not kind of, what's the word? It doesn't kind of resonate with modern society. We live in a society of instant gratification and certainty. And of course, nothing is ever certain. But on the whole, life had ticked along for most people, and it was certain. It had a kind of direction and certainty. So what I did was, because I could feel myself could easily, and I was 65, so I could feel myself could easily go into, oh my God, the fear and the isolation. So I went on Facebook and thought, well, I'm a psychotherapist. I can do some lives. I can do some lives about how we cope with anxiety, with uncertainty, with financial difficulties in these situations, with grief, with loss. And so I started doing these daily videos on Facebook and grew an enormous following. And through that, my my lady now, my kind of marketing manager lady, Andrea Britton, she got in touch with me. She saw these videos that I was doing daily. And it reminds me of what you were saying about doing the tarot daily and just kind of churning out all these videos. And she said, hi, I'm Andrea, and, I've been watching you on YouTube and everything, not on YouTube, sorry, on Facebook. And, you've really got something to say, and it's really valuable. And I'd like to help you perhaps put it into some kind of better framework, some kind of better content. And I have an online marketing company. And then how you go, this is going to cost me money.
Yeah, I get those. I get about 10 of them a day.
And so I kind of thought, and so I sort of said to her, and what's this going to cost? And she said, absolutely nothing. And I thought, don't believe that, but never mind. And anyway, something about, then I discovered she actually lives in the same village of me. So she wasn't a random person who'd found me from the UK. She lived in the same village as me in Gozo. So we couldn't meet because of COVID. So we met like this on Zoom, and I did her chart, and she just went, whoa, okay, right. Well, we need to talk. And that's how it kind of began, because I said to her, I want to bring my astrology together with my psychotherapy. Hence, I became Astro coach. Although at the beginning, when we used Facebook as our platform, you'll love this, I was Planetary Penny, which I love. And so I launched this business that I'm now 3 years into at 68, when I was 65, which just goes to show it's never too late.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that was that's my story in a nutshell.
Wow, well,
Well,
it's so
quite a big nutshell.
interesting. I mean, Penny, wow, what an interesting life you have lived. I mean, there we go from the, producing records,
Yeah.
which I listened to on your other YouTube channel. Was it Abigail? What's the surname?
Abigail Brown.
Abigail
Yes.
Brown. I listened to some of your singing. I'm like, wow, this girl can sing. I mean, obviously you can sing, otherwise they wouldn't have given you a record contract.
Yeah.
But to go from that to then become the Wolf of Wall Street, to then become a psychotherapist and an astrologer, and then you're doing coaching on live on Facebook, helping people through the pandemic, and also doing then moving it into YouTube and the Astro coach, pulling the two together to bring you to finally where you are now. And it fits and it clicks. It's very similar with me. I mean, the hypnotherapy and the readings and the spiritual teaching that I'd been doing face to face since 2001 had grown and grown and grown. And then in 2016, long before the pandemic, I started getting referrals from word of mouth from people abroad. I mean, I lived in Britain, in England. And I was getting emails saying, I live in India, but I'm an American lady, and could I have a session? And when I first had that inquiry, I thought, well, what the hell? How you can't possibly hypnotize somebody through a computer screen. So I tuned in, and my guides and higher self said, you absolutely can. And so I just said, okay. So we set up the session on Skype. I'd never used it. I created an account, and I said to her, normally people pay up front, but I said, I don't know if this is going to work. So I'm not going to charge you if it doesn't work. If it does work, pay me after. And what was shocking to me was that not only did it work, but it worked better. Because I predominantly work with people with anxiety and, stress and all sorts of things. They didn't have to come out in their car, find parking, come to a stranger's house, sit in a stranger's room. They were in their own space. They were more relaxed, and they went down into a hypnotic trance easier, quicker, better. We achieved better results quicker. And I thought, this is an absolute game changer. I went straight onto my website and I added it on the homepage. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, we can work, whether it's on Facebook Messenger, FaceTime, Skype. I don't think I wasn't aware of Zoom at the time, but certainly the others. And I started moving it online. And by 2019, I only had 3 clients left coming to the house. Everybody else was online. And I got to the end of the year and I thought, I've not got a huge house, and one of my rooms is just a dedicated therapy room. And I would love to be able to have that as a dining room or a meditation space or something other. So I made the decision to close down the therapy room and say it is only online. And actually, FaceTime is not particularly reliable, and neither is Facebook Messenger. And so initially I said it's Zoom or Skype. That is it. You pay up front in advance. I created an online booking system, and all of that was done at the end of 2019. And up until that point, I'd been self-employed, doing my own accounts. And my guide said to me, you want to get ready because this is going to grow, and it's going to grow fast, and you need to take your business to the next level. So I reached out to an accountant, which I'd never had before, and I made my business a limited company and me a director of that limited company. And I just went, right, let's see what happens. And I was just told 2020 is going to be huge for you. I'm like, okay. And along came the pandemic, and I was, I believe, literally the only hypnotherapist in Britain and probably most of the world that was still working, because I'd been working online for 5 years. 4 or 5 years. And I was also doing readings. I'd been on YouTube for 2.5 years. 2018, beginning of 2018, I started my YouTube and tarot, and also a lot in there about anxiety, depression, how to get through, and also spiritually, how to cleanse your energy, stay focused, stay healthy, all the rest of it. So I was ridiculously busy through 2020, and I've continued to be busy ever since. And telling people you can do any of your work online as long as you've got a decent internet connection is absolutely the way to go. And I want to know about this move from, because obviously you're British, you were working in Kent, which is for England, for those of you outside of England. Kent is in England, and you went over to, was it Gozo or Gozo?
Gozo. So
Gozo.
it's Malta.
It's Malta, right, in the Mediterranean.
In the Mediterranean. We're 60 miles south of Sicily. There is a huge amount of archaeological history here. We have massive temples that are dedicated to the goddess. And we have one of the oldest temples in the world on Gozo, which is looked after by, is it called World Heritage, I think, isn't it? And they think it's actually older than the pyramids.
Wow.
So it's pretty kind of powerful stuff.
So when did you go over there?
Well, I've been coming to Malta and Gozo with my parents when I was growing up since 1968.
Okay.
So quite a long time. And so these holidays, and I'd always had a feeling, and you've been talking about when things just fall into place.
Yeah.
And these are the experiences I've had in my life where I know if I get out of my own way and just let the divine guide me, point me, it'll be okay. And that if I'm knocking on a door that doesn't open, it's not my door.
Yeah.
At least maybe not at the moment. So I came to Gozo to live in 2004. My father had died suffering from Alzheimer's in 2002. And my mother had had a stroke shortly before he died. And I'd always wanted to come and live in Gozo. And my mother had moved in with me. So I became her full-time carer. And during 2003, I said to her, listen, you know I want to go to Gozo. Why don't we do what I'm doing here with you in Gozo? Because I don't really want to stay in this house. It was my house, but living, you know, going up to my little attic room, so to speak, where I see my clients, because we didn't have the online facilities that we have nowadays. And, you know, so I was working as a therapist, but it became more and more difficult because I was my mother's carer and she was disabled and needed, you know, help with bathroom and all of that. So it was very difficult and challenging. So we moved here. And I was just coming up to, I think I just turned 48, 49 when I moved here. And it was before Malta entered the EU. So it was actually quite a challenge to move here. We had some difficulties and some struggles, but finally got the residence that we needed to be in, which was a very beautiful old 500-year-old farmhouse with the most amazing energy and spirit all over the place. It was just like, you know, it was like, oh, hello, oh, there's another one. It was just extraordinary. And so that kind of continued to open me up to sort of all these energies that I'd been learning about and discovering through the years. So we moved here, and I looked after her till she died in 2015.
Okay.
And she was 89 and I was 60. So here I am at 68, running a business that I had no idea could ever really have unfolded for me. And you often hear these stories, how people suddenly find themselves or find the perfect kind of career when they're much older. And I'd never known that that could happen for me. And of course it has. And like you were saying at the beginning, it's pretty kind of, takes a lot of energy. You have to be consistent, and the kind of toll on one's energy can be quite high. So I'm learning how I have to pace myself and take more time out. I'm really careful how many clients I have in a day or in a week, so that I don't, because my biggest market is the United States. So it means a lot of my sessions are late afternoon.
Yeah.
And I'm not much good after 6 o'clock in the evening. So
yeah, I know what you mean. I'm in the same boat. I think about 70% of my clients are from America and Canada. And, you know, we're kind of a little bit of a disadvantage over here in Europe when the bulk of your clients are 5 to 8 hours behind you. I mean, I'm just setting up now a class that I want to do online to teach people how to use YouTube and get the most out of it and be able to grow their business and their income from doing that. And I was sat with it for about an hour trying to work out what time I can do this, because, you know, the best time for most of my clients is going to be sort of early evening. That's 3 o'clock in the morning for me. That's not going to work. So, you know, I'm a little bit like you know, I've just turned 60 now, and, you know, I get tired by about 7 o'clock. You know, my last session is done and finished at 7 o'clock. And I was thinking, you know, this is going to be possibly a 3-hour class. And so I can't really start it later than 5 p.m. my time, that I'll be working until 8. So I just thought, well, that means I'm going to potentially kind of make it quite difficult for a lot of people to attend live. So all I can do is I'll make sure there's a replay available for them, and they can email me questions beforehand. So, you know, we find ways to work around it. But I'd love to do more lives on YouTube. And people are always asking me, you know, why don't you go live very often? And again, it's the same sort of thing, that if I was going live, it would be mid-afternoon, and most of them are in work or just getting up. And so, you know, it does create a bit of a problem. But we just you know, it hasn't stopped my business growing. I would just like to be a little bit more available on a live way rather than just always sort of interacting. Like you've been doing a lot of lives on YouTube, I've noticed.
I love doing the lives, maybe because I was a drama school student, I was a singer, I sang here in Gozo. Up until the pandemic, I was with a jazz band and we did gigs every other week. So I have this kind of, I think, I'm a performer.
Yeah.
And I think I respond best to the live energy because you've got the online chat coming up, and I'm getting into the kind of habit now of just learning how to not get too distracted by it, but kind of work symbiotically with it.
Yeah.
And so yes, I want to do more lives.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, I
love.
agree with you. When I've done the lives, my energy's been off the charts. I mean, you know, because you've got all those people in the chat. But when I've been doing lives, generally, I would be doing sort of one answer questions and I'm pulling tarot cards. And I went on for about 2.5 hours and I'd done more than 50 readings for people. I was hanging and I said, I'm going to have to go now. I've got to stop now. But it was like, no, you haven't done me. You've got to do me. You've got to do me. And it's you've got to be quite strict with your boundaries. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Saturnian energy. It's that
Yeah.
Saturn energy,
Yeah.
which is so much about the containment, the boundaries, and basically it's about looking after the self. Because if we
Definitely.
don't look after us first,
Yeah.
and I'm learning that big time at the moment, I've got to put myself first because I won't be any good for anyone else if I don't take care of me first.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Put your own mask on, as they say on the airplanes, before you put
Yeah.
anybody else's. So
Right.
let's talk a little bit about the astrology coming up for the rest of the year, as we've just come into October now. We just had this big full moon on the 29th of September, and we've got the new moon coming up in a couple of weeks, and then we've got the eclipse season coming in. So tell us a little bit what we're in for, what kind of ride have we got going on for the next 3 months to the end of the year?
Well, in general, the energies are going to, I think, speed up a bit, and they are going to open up. So I don't think we're going to feel. I think we're still going to be exhausted, but I think it. Oh, no, that sounds terrible. Not exhausted, but I think we're still going to find it quite exhausting energy, but in an energizing way, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And this total solar eclipse we've got in Libra, which is on the 14th, is it's opposite Chiron, which is the wounded healer. It's a new moon. It's about bringing in healing. So even though it's eclipse, it's almost like, whose light are you dimming? Is it your own? Is it that part of you that you are not honoring enough so that the healing can't actually take place? So that is quite challenging, I think, for a lot of people. I think the way society is, we run ourselves ragged at times. And so it's about looking at the Saturn energy, because Saturn will go direct. Let me see, when does Saturn go direct? Not long. It goes direct, I think, next month. It goes direct in November. So Saturn goes direct in Pisces on the 4th of November. And Pluto, that is going direct on the 10th, 11th of this month, which is great news, and I'll explain them all in a minute, goes into Aquarius for another little visit on the 25th, 26th of January 2024. But we've had a lot of retrograde energy, which has really not been helpful to any of us. And what happens with retrograde energy is that you could feel a bit like you're kind of almost in a hall of mirrors and you're not quite sure which way to go, or you're in a bouncy castle and it's just throwing you off course all the time. So there's that kind of energy. Now, this month, we have to watch out for really the lunar eclipse, or sorry, the solar eclipse that's on the 14th, which, as I say, is a new moon. And we have to remember it's a new moon. So it is about inviting in. Libra is about relationship. But because of this Chiron, I feel it's something about, don't forget the relationship you have with yourself. So that, because if we don't have the good relationship with ourselves first, we can't have the good relationship with another. So that is hugely important. And just before the eclipse, we have Pluto stationing direct in Capricorn. And Pluto is really trying to get us all to look at what we've been doing in our lives for many, many years that is not really working or serving us in the right way. It's about really looking at how we can change the structure of the way we've been doing things, because if we don't do this consciously, the cosmos and the divine will step in and present an event, like we get sick, or we have an accident, or we break a bone, or, you know, God forbid. But these are the kind of things that can happen with astrology. It's so much about, it gives us, it shows us where to internalize and work on that inner level and think, how can what do I need to change in my life? What would serve me better? And the others that I'm with, my family, my friends, my partner, if you have one. And Saturn going direct in November is going to, again, we're going to feel a little bit like, whoa, things are freeing up again a bit. And it will move back through Pisces. You see, Saturn in Pisces is not the best place for it to be, because it's going to be too kind of stern and fractious and cross about anyone who is all over the place and hasn't got their kind of shit together. And it's going to be like, you know, if you have any addiction problems, they are going to be exacerbated by Saturn, because Saturn is saying, you've got to sort this out. Now is the time, sort it out. Now, this month, we have a very difficult aspect between Mars, that is in Scorpio, and Mars, of course, is our planet of action, energy, assertion, but also aggression, war, arguments. It's also like a knife. It cuts through. So it'll cut through things in your life. And it's squaring Pluto that is now direct. So you've got this Saturn, Pluto in Capricorn square. We are going to see real kind of, I think if we look at the world stage, I think there's going to be more potential for breaking out of literally fighting, of that kind of, you know, sometimes we've seen on the news where somebody in a government situation actually gets so angry with the man next to him or across the room, he goes and shakes him, and they start a little scuffle. It has that kind of energy about it. And I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking about what's happening in the United States. And I think that the US is going to be really feeling this energy in a strong way, because they are having their Pluto return, which means Pluto has returned to the same point it was at the Declaration of Independence, which was all about a civil war. And if they're not careful, that is what is going to happen. Now, the American people have to decide whether they want that literally, or whether they can work with it in a way that it can be sorted out on a kind of internal and collective emotional level. So I'll pause at that point because you might want to ask me something.
Yeah, that's very interesting about the States. Yeah, I've heard about this Pluto's return. And so things are kind of being shifted and molded. And with Saturn as well, which is all about structure, as you say, it's sort of the structures could be being torn down. We could be having the tower moment here with things being reshaped and reformed. It's interesting about the timing because I don't necessarily follow. I watch the astrology, but I kind of listen to my team, and they've been saying to me, you know, you're going to be creating new classes and programs and mentorship and group work, and you're going to be doing it all differently. And I'm like, when do you want me to do that? We'll tell you when. And I woke up this morning and it was when? Now. Right. And I'm like, okay, 2nd of October. I'm now in this start to create a brand new structure. So I'm feeling these energies already. So I'm shifting my world and my business. And when we do it on an individual level, that always feeds into the collective. And so if we think then how many millions of people are in the States doing a similar thing through October, shifting and changing their structures, their foundations, their anchor, picking up the anchors, moving it somewhere else, making these shifts and changes with Chiron there as well, kind of saying which bit is holding you back, what bit needs healing, let's fix this, let's sort that. Then actually you've got quite a bubbling cauldron going on in October. But what we've got to do is very easy to go into the fear and say, oh my God, you know, there's going to be chaos reigning everywhere. Or we go into the energy of saying, right, whatever needs to be torn down is in my highest good and in my country's highest good. And in my, you know, the politics, you know, needs to be completely shaken up, not just in the States, but certainly in the UK as well, and in probably many other countries as well. But we try and stay away from politics so that I don't get demonetized, closed down. But yes, so you know, we've also got what's going on in the Ukraine as well, of course, and you know, the various tensions. So we're saying really we can see a lot of these tensions coming to breaking point, which is then going to create something new, the phoenix rising out of the ashes. Is that what we're expecting then?
Yes, I think that is a very good way of putting it. And while you were talking, I just pulled up the chart for now, for this moment in time, because I think that is always a very good indicator of what we can expect, because we're talking about these things. Now, the moon is what we look for, and the moon is in Taurus. It's a 21 degrees conjunct Uranus at 22 degrees. Uranus is the planet of the unexpected, but also of waking up. It can be shocks and it can be earthquakes, and I don't necessarily mean literal earthquakes, although it's caused a few of those as we've gone through the Uranus in Taurus energy. But it's about waking up and it's about freedom and rebellion. But as you said, the rebellion doesn't have to be fought on the streets. It can actually be fought in a very different way, because the more people, say people like you and I, can help to elevate their level of consciousness, to look at what they're doing individually and in their own group, their own circle. And just like you said at the beginning, look for what is for my highest good and the highest good of others. If we're within that energy, then we're all in a good way going forward. And the energy today of this moon conjunct Uranus, Jupiter is widely conjunct in Taurus, is actually really super interesting, because Uranus and Jupiter are going to have a conjunction round about March, April next year, which is like a biggie. This is a biggie. And this is a highly spiritual awakening. This is a spiritual awakening happening within a kind of, within a something to do with self-worth and value. And also it could literally be on the world stage economically, with what might be going on politically, etc. Because the moon is conjunct Uranus and actually conjunct Jupiter, it's kind of bringing them together, it's marrying them together. So it's saying, look at what is happening next spring. That is when we're going to get like a massive opportunity to go this way or that way. And I feel it's as if there's a kind of divide within the collective. And this is in no way critical, but there are those that want to go up to that kind of higher vibration, if that makes sense, and those that maybe don't choose to, or maybe it's just not right for them. And so I'm seeing this kind of divide coming up. And I think that what has to happen, and if this Jupiter and Uranus can be used to bring that together, so that actually those that feel they're getting a little bit left behind, it's a little bit like with the technology, how the technology is leaving behind a whole generations of people, including myself at times, as you know, when I can't kind of keep up with it. And Uranus as well is about technology. It's about the internet. So this is really very significant energy that is around now in this moment. And as you know, it's now that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Okay. So we've got this period that we're in now then is really about laying the groundwork and the foundations and the demolishing that needs to be done for us to be able to really open up come next spring, when, you know, I've been talking about this energy, this, you know, when we've been moving into 5D gradually and gently over the last 25 years or so. We are now really feeling the effects of that. The whole collective consciousness is raising. It is at that critical mass point where it becomes a tipping point, where there is more people that have raised their vibration than have not, and which then spreads the light out and allows other people to awaken to their own awareness, gifts, freedoms as well. So, you know, there are times that we look at Saturn and kind of go, oh, the hard taskmaster. And other times we say, well, thank God for Saturn, so that we can really look at these structures, which frankly, in many places are completely cracked and broken and need to be collapsed in order for the new world to be born. And we're not talking about massive revolution or anything. We're talking energetically a higher vibrational world of just the world that we all want to be, you know. And I read a little Facebook post the other day. I think it was just one line, and it said something like, there's nothing I can do, said 8 million billion people. And it's like, oh, I think, yeah, 8 billion people. There's nothing I can do as an individual, said 8 billion people. It's like we're stepping into this I am and I matter and I count. And when we all are in that energy together collectively, then those that are trying to hold us back with the power and control and, you know, not wanting to lose their status and place in the world, will finally lose their grip on that kind of disempowerment of the masses when the masses raise, and they will, and we are rising as we move forward. So there's a question I wanted to ask, because there's lots of people like me who know a little bit about astrology and, you know, understand even less, because it is such a complex subject. So I understand when it's a trine, it's a good thing, and when it's a square, it's a bad thing, and a conjunction is kind of them coming together and working together-ish. What about these degrees? I hear these degrees all the time, at 22 degrees this and a 5 degree that. What the hell is that? It makes no sense to me. What does it mean?
And this is one of the things that I try to do, is to bring or create an astrological kind of understanding that's simple and easy, because you know, there's a lot of astrologers out there who are brilliant, but I know a lot of people find it difficult to follow them. So basically, a trine can be helpful. However, it can mean we sit back and do nothing.
Okay.
A square sounds like it's bad, and it can be, but also it's about, this is a challenge. how can I make this work for me?
Okay.
A conjunction is like kind of supercharging the energy of both those cosmic bodies and saying, wow, we're going to have Jupiter conjunct Uranus. This is super exciting because this is opening up our spiritual thinking and awareness, which it will. That's why the end of kind of March, April is going to be so super exciting, because we've got this energy of people waking up, the collective waking up. Jupiter expands. Yeah, there are lots of other things it could be on a mundane level, but let's stay with the positive, uplifting thing. And the degrees. So, for instance, at the moment, right in this moment in time, Pluto still retrograde for a few more days, but it's at 27 degrees of Capricorn. So it's really what we call applying to Aquarius. So it's trying to get there. It's trying to move in there. It wants to bring in that Aquarian energy. And the exciting thing about this chart that I've just brought up is that Aquarius is the ascendant at 0 degree. So it's at the beginning of this sense of awakening. So this is a super good chart for you and I now doing this podcast. Pluto is conjunct the ascendant, meaning transformation, empowerment. Now, I would see that for both of us, and it's about massive change and extraordinary kind of growth. So that, and also it's about, because it's Aquarius, using the technology, doing, you said at the beginning about working online, and I absolutely agree with you. I find it so difficult. I cannot work with someone in the room with me now. I need to have this focus, because somehow this focus on Zoom or Skype or whatever we're using really works for me, like you said it does for you, very well. So, I'd like to say, if anyone's thinking of having an astrological reading with me, honestly, it just works so much better via Zoom, Skype, Teams, or whatever particular modality we use. So,
yeah. And what services do you offer? Obviously, you offer one-to-one sessions online. What kind of sessions do you do?
So I do, basically, the first session is about looking at your natal chart and interpreting it, hopefully in a way that is empowering and helpful, and then bringing in the transits, and the transits mean what the planets are doing now and how they can affect what's happening to you over the next few weeks, few months.
Okay.
So I personally don't like to go too far ahead, because astrology is a system that actually we can mold to work, make it work for us. So I don't use astrology as a kind of set in stone way of looking at the future. It's not about looking at the future. It's saying, here, the astrology is showing you, if you go this way, you can expect X, Y, Z. But if you go this way might actually be better for you. If you do nothing, the cosmos might take you that way because it decides you need to learn the lessons that come from that direction. But I combine my astrology with my, knowledge of psychotherapy and psychology. I can't help but do that. And so it's kind of it's a psychological, psychotherapeutic, astrological reading. So, I always make it clear it's not about fortune telling.
Yeah.
And I know that even with the tarot, it's just not. It's something very different. I read the tarot too. I've read them since I was 12. So I like working with the energy of the tarot at times, but I don't offer that as a service online. although if someone wanted me to pull a card or a couple, I would pull a card. And then I also offer straight coaching sessions. So you have a kind of, the first session is to get to know each other, find out what your problems are. Like I also get a lot of people that suffer with anxiety and various, depression, that kind of area that sadly is so common. And then I have follow-up sessions so people can be as flexible and have as much or as little as they need. So the first session is a little bit more expensive than the follow-up sessions. The follow-up sessions at a more reasonable price. I've also just, or rather Andrea, has just uploaded to our website an introduction, a beginner's guide to looking at your natal chart. And that's available via my website, pennydix.com. And it's very reasonably priced. There are 4 videos in it of me describing various parts of beginner's astrology. But it just gives you a little flavor of it. And I'm hopefully going to be offering, like you've been talking about, Zoom meetings or online meetings where I can have a group of people together to discuss various aspects of astrology.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I would be right up for that. You'll have to let me know about that. Do you have a newsletter that goes out? How do people find out?
Okay, well, that's part of what we're planning.
Okay.
It's the planning stage has got a little bit kind of, as things do. I'm actually having a planning meeting with my marketing lady this week, and we're going to talk about next year, where we go from here. I've had to just slow down a bit on my output of videos. I think you recognize this as a sort of thing that happens with YouTube, because I can't keep up the pace.
Yeah.
It's the stamina.
Yeah.
So I'm having to just stand back a bit, and I'm trying to produce quality, not quantity.
Yeah.
And if the subs go down a bit, so be it. It's a kind of monster that you can't kind of satisfy, isn't it, YouTube?
Yeah. It is really about consistency, but we don't need to be banging out 100, YouTube videos a month. I'm doing around 30 a month, and that is absolutely my maximum now. And I've reduced the amount of clients that I'm taking as well to try and just slow it all down. I've just moved home. I've just turned 60. I want to just enjoy my new home a little bit, and not be constantly having to stick to a timetable where these have to be done by a certain date. But it's, the thing is with the work that we do, you're an astrologer, there are particular transits and moons that are on a particular date. And so we are a little bit restricted. I know I tried for 3 months to do timeless readings. I did them through July, August and September, and said, look, whenever you find them, I'm not going to say this is for September, because if I say it's for September, I have got to get 12 recorded, uploaded and ready to go live by the 31st of August. And that is very often a big ask. And so by saying, look, I will just post as and when I can, and this is for whenever you find it. And there are many other channels that do that successfully. Swimming Through the Void does it successfully. But I've had some, I wouldn't say complaints, but I've had a lot of people, I have put them up now for October, saying this is for October, where I've had so many people saying, I really like to know that this is for this month. But really with tarot, this is energy that it's fluid, it's flowing. So things are shifting. We are all shifting. Well, Penny, we are more than over time. We've had a very long chat, and it has been an absolute pleasure. May I invite you back on again, and we can talk some more about these transits and conjunctions and degrees and all of this wonderful things. And so to be able to find Penny, pennydix.com on a website, and on YouTube is Astro Coach.
It's Astrology with Penny Dick's Astro Coach.
There we go. Astrology with Penny Dick's Astro Coach. I will put the links for Penny in the description box below. Do check her out. Go and join her channel and book in a session if that feels right for you. So Penny, final words for us, please.
Right. Well, don't sweat the small stuff, as they say, because I just feel, things are changing, but, we are looked after by a wonderful divine energy that has our backs.
Oh, I completely hear, amen to that. Completely agree with you. All right, well, that is it for today's show then, my beautiful people. Thank you so much for joining us, for listening, for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know, give us some feedback, and I will be back probably in 2 weeks' time. I know I say I post every week, but at the moment I am slowing down a little. We're going to go with a 2-week period. I'll see you then. Have an amazing week, month. Sending you all much love. Bye-bye.